Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are breaking down the biggest storylines surrounding the San Francisco 49ers heading into the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. We have some updates on Dre Greenlaw. The Niners re-signed an offensive lineman this morning, and we're going to talk about a prospect from every position I think I, and the rest of the San Francisco 49er faithful should be looking out for at the Combine this week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on the audio podcasting platforms. Leave us that 5-star review, and let's dive into today's events, starting off with the biggest news of the day thus far. That is the San Francisco 49ers re-signing offensive lineman Ben Bartch to a 1-year deal. This is a move that I think everybody expected to happen. I think that Ben Bartch played well enough last year to at least warrant a 1-year extension on his contract. He was going to be an unrestricted free agent in the next, 20 days or so once the new league year begins. That said, I love this move. I think it's a smart move. Yes, in one way it gives you depth, but also I think Ben Bartch played good enough to even have a shot to be this team's starting left guard last year. I know a lot of fans will say, no, go get this guy, get that guy, draft this player, do this stuff. Fans may even say move Dominic Purdy over to left guard next year. And I think while some of that's valid, I think that Ben Bartch played good enough to at least make San Francisco think in their head, can he be our John Feliciano of 2 years ago, right? Where John comes in, he's a depth guy initially, but if things go awry, he comes in, he starts for you. And I think Bartch has a lot more to offer than I think fans realize. He was a 4th-round pick in 2020 of the Jacksonville Jaguars on the practice squad for a couple years, didn't play well. San Francisco scoops him up last year. Then this past season in 2024, it shows signs of promise through 3-ish games of play. If you go to his PFF grades and scores, I think he ranked as the 3rd highest graded offensive lineman on the team this year behind Trent Williams and Dominic Purdy, which doesn't really say much when you talk about the other guys, Jake Brendel and Burford and McKivitz, but Bartch was actually well above average this past year on offense, had a 74.8 offensive grade per PFF. As a run blocker, a 71.2 grade, so pretty good there, but was really, really good as a pass blocker, a 74 grade with 2 games above a 78 grade. Really good there. Played 65 snaps at left guard in 2024. Allowed 1 pressure, allowed 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits, and had an efficiency rating of 98.4 as a pass protector. Again, I get it. It's Ben Bartch. He doesn't scream, oh my goodness, what a splash signing. But I do think it gives you depth. It protects you. And on the off chance Ben Bartch plays well or this team doesn't draft a left guard this year, which I don't think they will, he gives you some protection and maybe a starting caliber player if he gets a shot to start throughout training camp in the preseason. Either way, a good signing, a good move. But that really wasn't the biggest storyline of the day thus far. Certainly the biggest move, but was not the biggest storyline. Although Fluffy Ninja says, bang, bang in the YouTube chat. He also says, I like the center from Atlanta. Hopefully we can get him in free agency. He's referring to Drew Dahlman. I think he is one of the most linked names, one of the free agents that almost everybody points to and says, that guy should come to San Francisco. He has connections via his father, who played here with the Niners about 30, 20 years ago now. In the 80s and 90s, I believe. He also is from Northern California. And Kyle Shanahan, the odds this team drafts a center are slim to none. He wants those veteran guys. Drew Dahlman fits the bill, albeit when you have Jake Brendel, you sign Matt Hennessy to a 2-year deal, who was a Falcon center a couple of years back, and then Dahlman came in, took his job. Hennessy goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now Hennessy's hoping to get kind of find his place in the NFL again with San Francisco. Pricing's all that matters. Money is such a big deal, obviously. You got to re-sign Brock Purdy. You want to re-sign George Kittle. You want to re-sign and extend Fred Warner. Like, money's so big to a point that this team may say, what do we prioritize? Which kind of brings me to, which thank you, Fluffy Ninja, for your comment, to the next portion of the show, the next topic, because this morning of really kind of shocker, because there's been so many mixed signals when discussing the future of Dre Greenlaw in San Francisco. Many will say, bring him back on a one-year deal. I'm of that group that says, yes, a 1 year, $6 to $8 million deal with incentives makes sense for me. As much as you inch closer to double digits, that's where I get a little scared for a player with his injury history. That said, whether it's Barros, Mayoko, Inman, now the Mercury News, a lot of mixed signals. A lot of they'll bring him back per Mayoko. A lot of I don't think he wants to come back. He wants to be his own man and get paid big money via Matt Barros. And then if you look at what Cam Inman said this morning on the Mercury News, rather shocking, because according to Cam Inman in a mailbag episode, if you will, of his with the Mercury News, he says that, and I quote here, an under the radar headache that could really impact this offseason's spending is Fred Warner's contract extension. He's owed $17.7 million in salary each of the next 2 seasons, and the Niners will have to do for him what they did a year ago in paying more to Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams. So what Inman is really saying here is that while Warner's under contract, while San Francisco has $50 million to spend in free agency, when you, again, add in higher salary cap hits for your star players, you add in spending money on Brock Purdy, who inevitably his $5 million cap hit this year is going to increase because of his massive contract he'll get this offseason, a George Kittle extension, yet in Fred's contract extension, and what seems like Inman's getting at here is that he is going to want to raise not just more years, but a higher salary. You may see Warner get around $19 to $20 million per year on the AAV, which isn't the cap hit, but does matter when it comes to guaranteed money. And it does and will inevitably change the salary caps in the future, which could make San Francisco leery of giving Greenlaw 1 to 2 year deal, and may make them refrain from spending a higher salary on him this offseason. Inman continues here and states, Greenlaw's future isn't directly tied to Warner's extension, but it's hard to see these Niners also affording Greenlaw, whose health is a bigger red flag than any monetary demand. So again, like every other player in the NFL, things come down to money. But if you believe Cam Inman, this idea that Dre Greenlaw, essentially his name, his priority, gets knocked down the list of the San Francisco 49ers, the more Brock Purdy, Kittle, Warner, inevitably, you got to get rid of Deebo Samuel, the NFL draft. Like, Greenlaw made this leave because this team says, look, we don't want to pay you $10 million. We have to extend Fred, who's actually been healthy and played on a fractured ankle last year. They'll prioritize Fred over Dre Greenlaw, which could make Greenlaw not want to wait around, and could also see Greenlaw leaving free agency this year, which the more days that go by, it certainly seems like that's going to happen, unfortunately. It certainly stinks to watch Greenlaw leave, obviously, that we are all tied to him in a certain way. The way he plays, it's awesome. But the clock is kind of taking on his tenure in San Francisco, which again may end on March 12th when the new league year begins. Benali P in the YouTube chat says, the Niners should recruit free agent offensive linemen with the bribe of free cars on Christmas. I mean, maybe there are some free agent offensive linemen that see Brock Purdy's massive, lucrative contract extension coming down the pipe and say, those Christmas gifts might be pretty nice in 2025. So maybe if Drew Dahlman's out there and says, yeah, I like San Francisco, but I'm just not sure, they just slap down Brock Purdy's guaranteed salary this year and say, hey, but on Christmas Day, it'll be worth it eventually for you. So maybe a good recruiting tactic for the San Francisco 49ers. Bobo here says, build the trenches through the draft like they did when Kyle and John got here. Tom Brady used to include his offensive lineman in endorsement deals. Hopefully, Brock does the same. Uh, I mean, I obviously can't speak to the endorsement deal conversation, but I agree with you when it comes to building through the trenches. San Francisco has neglected the trenches for a long time during the NFL draft. I believe the last defensive lineman they've taken was Robert Beal Jr. a couple of years ago, which he's done absolutely nothing for them, albeit a late round draft pick. Clea Davis as well, then Drake Jackson. Not many high end picks used. I think this year it's going to change. All the indications I've gotten and I've read in Kawakami and the way the team is going, bringing back Robert Saleh, all the indications kind of hint towards them getting something of a defensive reshaping done this offseason via the NFL draft. I don't think they'll spend big money on the free agent pool, the NFL combines this week, that's when conversations start talking, or excuse me, are had. That's when teams start talking. Anything is possible during the combine week. You'll hear a ton of rumors out here from Rappaport and Schefter and Pelissero and Rossini. You're going to hear things that maybe smoke, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So you never know what can happen during the NFL combine. That's where Trey Lance got acquired essentially by the San Francisco 49ers in the 2021 drafting combine. They said, look, we're desperate. We're seeing these guys up close for the first time in a long time. Then obviously things went to the hell after that because Trey Lance, not very good for the San Francisco 49ers. And now, according to reports out of Dallas, they're going to let him walk, meaning that every first round pick quarterback of the 2021 NFL draft, meaning Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Trevor Lawrence, only one of those guys will be rostered before free agency begins this year. That being Trevor Lawrence. Talk about a crap shoot. I do want to say this, though. If you want to watch your San Francisco 49ers play next year in 2025, or you want to go to an NBA game, the Warriors are hot currently, 5-1 with Jimmy Butler on the team, or you're watching spring training and you're seeing your favorite baseball team out there for the first time in months, and you say, hey, I want to go to the yard this summer, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase. Also want to ask you a very important question. Do you want to perform like the GOAT Jerry Rice? Then you got to get yourself a can of GOAT Fuel. Whether an athlete or a normal person like myself, GOAT Fuel can bring the best out of every single one of us. Click that link down below and save 10% off your purchase of GOAT Fuel because, look, we all want to perform like the greatest of all time. GOAT Fuel is the only energy drink that can help you do that. So grab that can of GOAT Fuel down below in the description. And now let's dive into the biggest and most important storylines of the NFL Scouting Combine in 2025. Kind of already hinted towards Dre Greenlaw's future being up in the air. I think, once you get to the combine, again, teams start talking, you get a lot of free agency, a lot of teams being linked to certain players and whatnot, and you kind of get a feel as to where teams are viewing their own free agents before the actual free agency period begins. We've already seen a couple people re-signed or released in the last couple of days. I think the Browns released Juwan Thornhill today. So you will see some movement there. You may also hear rumors of trades. That said, I think Dre Greenlaw's future will be discussed. You'll probably hear they're going to bring him back. They're not going to bring him back, albeit I think they'll try to. I think he'll be a smaller name that'll be talked about amongst Niner insiders at the combine. Kawakami, Barros, Mayoko, Jennifer Lee Chan once they go. You'll hear certain things come up. But one of the bigger names out there, which has been widely discussed on this show and many others, is Deebo Samuel. The Niners have a ticking clock, a running clock, as to when they can get a trade done for Deebo Samuel. The great thing about the timing of Samuel's request, albeit wish he didn't do that publicly, is that they are going to a place, John Lynch will be there, many other GMs will be there at the combine as well. When these teams get together, magic can happen. Trades can get sparked. I would not be shocked to hear some movement or maybe some removal of Deebo Samuel trade talks. You'll kind of get a bender break, I think, this week when it comes to if they can actually move him before free agency begins. I'm sure you'll hear names like the Steelers, the Ravens, maybe the Commanders and others out there that want Deebo, but I'm sure you'll kind of like when I think about what we're going to hear about Deebo Samuel this week, it'll probably be by Diana Rossini, and it'll probably say the San Francisco 49ers have been shopping Deebo Samuel, but the asking price is too high and they haven't gotten what they've liked in the trade offers they've been given. I'm going to believe that they are going to release him before the new league year begins, before his bonus hits later on March 22nd. But I'm sure we'll get some Deebo Samuel updates in the meantime, which I will likely believe they're going to be negative in regards to them being able to trade him. Also, Brock Purdy's contract, like when John Lynch talks to the media this week, I'm going to assume the first question will be, John, have you talked to Brock Purdy and his agent? I'm sure John will give you the coach speak answer. Yeah, we've talked, ongoing negotiations. Don't want to dive too much into it, but that's a big storyline. I think, you have Matthew Stafford being out there via trade. Kirk Cousins might get moved by the Falcons, amongst other quarterbacks on the open market, albeit San Francisco isn't looking for one. You're going to hear Brock Purdy's name out there. You're going to hear, values being tossed around, which you've already had the last couple of months of the season and during the offseason. But you're going to hear Brock Purdy's name get brought up. I'm not going to assume we're going to get a big update. The way San Francisco does things, it doesn't lend me to believe that they're going to, give this, oh yeah, the deal's almost done. It'll be a very much, we're working on it kind of deal. So I don't think too much will happen there, but I think a lot of health updates will happen. I think when you talk about Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk, a lot of health updates I'm sure will happen at the NFL Combine. People have questions. People want to know, how's Christian doing? Obviously, his father said during the Radio Row on Super Bowl week that Christian should be 100% by now, which is a great sign, albeit I think maybe getting some reassurance on that front will help during the combine week we have in the next few days or so. Then Trent Williams. I know John Lynch talked about Trent wanting to come back and he'll be back next year. Trent's older now, right? And the health was a massive problem for him last year, albeit missed a large portion of last season because of his child unfortunately passing away. I think you have to ask, like, John, how's Trent doing? And also, where's the ankle at? He was on that scooter almost like the last few months of the season. Then obviously, when tragedy struck, didn't come around for obvious reasons. I think it's important to know, how's your star left tackle doing at the age of 36, 37, right? So I think we'll get updates there. I also think that Brandon Aiyuk, like when you have Deebo Samuel wanting out, a lot of the attention turns to Brandon Aiyuk during the scouting combine and his health. Tore his ACL, tore his MCL, had other ligament damage in his knee when he got hurt against the Kansas City Chiefs in October. The hope is that he's back by late October, early November. The optimistic side of things is maybe he's back before that, albeit I'm not one of those people that believes that. I think for Aiyuk and for the San Francisco 49ers, you're paying him $30 million a year. He looks pretty bad in year one for a variety of reasons, one of those being the contract hold-in that he had. But now he's not healthy. And so I think that'll be a massive update. Where's Aiyuk? Is he out of the brace? Is he off crutches? How is he doing? Right? So I think that'll be asked as it should be. But Ollie P says here in the YouTube chat that Niners netted a higher return on Trey Lance than they will for Deebo Samuel. Probably. San Francisco may have the aspirations to ask for a second-round pick. It's not going to happen. I have a hard time believing San Francisco, who often overvalues their own players, which is fine. I think it's a time to be realistic. Like as soon as Deebo said, I want out, the clock starts ticking on his age and what he can do with him financially. And San Francisco has to make a choice. Is it worth just cutting Deebo for whatever reason or getting something, anything back for him? The money you're going to save anyways. The cap hits the same, whether he's cut or traded pre-bonus on March 22nd. If a team says, hey, here's a 7th round pick. Hey, here's a backup kicker. Hey, here's whatever you want to give me. Give me, I don't even care. Give me a bag of Skittles and some M&Ms. It's better than nothing, right? And so San Francisco, I'm hoping, isn't fickle about this. Anything back for Deebo is a good thing. Although negotiations will happen, and I'm sure already are, I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked that Deebo gets nothing in return for the San Francisco 49ers. Kawachipto says, could have gotten Baltimore's first for Deebo and Jacksonville's first for Aiyuk. Sure, would have been nice to have Higgins and Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, obviously you can't predict injuries with Aiyuk, and so, that is what it is. But the Deebo one is more of like, what were you thinking? I don't know if the Ravens were offering a first-round draft pick, but I'm sure at some point in time, some team, whether it was the Patriots or the Ravens or somebody, was like, hey, we'll give you a second. Hey, we'll give you a third. And the Niners, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Deebo Samuel, overvalue their players to a degree that makes negotiating trades with them nearly impossible. And so, in retrospect, it's foolish to not deal Deebo. He had nothing more to offer for you really this year after an okay 2023. There was a lot of great signs of him, but the Niners really should have moved off of either Aiyuk or Deebo. And, again, in retrospect, moving Deebo would have been really smart last year. Let's see. Benali P says it would never happen in anything outside of Madden or Grant Cohn's mind. That was my own comment. But an in-division Stafford for Purdy trade will be entertaining in a sort of fun chaos way. I mean, sure, albeit I think that Brock Purdy, while Matthew Stafford's trending down. So even then, I think San Francisco loses that move. I think it'd be foolish, albeit in his prime, Stafford's incredible. Purdy's younger, going to be more expensive, but apparently the asking price that Stafford has for 1 or 2 more years of his playing time is $50 million per year. So I don't know how much cheaper he'll be than Brock Purdy at his age. Probably wouldn't be worth it by any means. Bobo says here that CMC is 30 and very old for running back, so I think his best years are behind him, and he's only planning to collect another $20 million from the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's correct to say CMC is old. I think it's okay to assume that the odds you see Offensive Player of the Year Christian McCaffrey in are pretty slim, albeit San Francisco has the versatility to move Christian McCaffrey around in the slot, in the backfield, do other things for you instead of being in between the tackle running back. That said, I think Christian McCaffrey takes what happened last year very serious. I think he wants to bounce back. Again, he's not 30 just yet, mind you. But I think Christian McCaffrey, there are a lot of players out there that simply get paid, get lazy, and don't want to play anymore. I don't think McCaffrey is that way. I think McCaffrey wants to be that bell cow still. I was doing some stats a couple weeks ago, maybe a few months ago. CMC has carried the football, touched the football, second most in the NFL since 2022, only behind Derrick Henry. He has been worn down, a lot of wear and tear. I think it'd be really important for San Francisco either to bring back Jordan Mason, which we'll see what tender they use on him and his contract as an RFA this offseason. But this is a deep running back class and a lot of guys you have to like. So I think there is room to support CMC and keep him fresh for 16, 17 games this year, which hopefully can bring you back to the playoffs when it's all said and done. moving along here on my notes I have in front of me, I think that we are going to get some updates on potential free agents and the Niners draft strategy. I think we're going to get an idea as to what they're looking for, albeit maybe we already have that with the salary hiring. Um, I think San Francisco may be okay going cheap on the offensive line. I think they saw Philadelphia and what they did. Um, and they said, look, we have to get 3 or 4 guys deep on the interior. I think that's the plan, which I have some guys that I like, and I'll get to in a second here. But I think that um, the free agency strategy will be interesting because San Francisco, albeit will make a big splash here or there, I think they just need to build the depth and round out their roster. They're very top end heavy. I don't think they're in the business of making this big splash signings this year. You'll have players like Ashton Davis and Julian Blackmon at safety, maybe. You'll have, Jamie Sherwood play linebacker, who's a solid guy with the Jets. I maybe the big name you see is Joey Bosa because of Nick, and once he gets cut, maybe from the Chargers, he wants to play for cheaper in San Francisco, be next to his brother. Like, you may see some big names, but not some big money being tossed around with San Francisco this offseason. I think it's more about how do you raise the floor of your group because the ceiling's already so high. Let's see what we got here. Fish and Chips says it's very difficult to get motivated for off-season stuff. Yeah, it is. Sometimes it's draft conversations and free agency. We will talk more about the draft in April when it actually matters. And I'll do my mock drafts then, like last year, and get into more scouting reports then. But, we're in this kind of in-between area where there's not really any moves happening. It's all hearsay. And it's a lot of will they, won't they, should they, could they. And we're kind of all anticipating the free agency. Now, the combines this week, again, steam picks up here and then kind of leads into free agency. But, we're kind of all just waiting tooth and nail. March 12th, when the new league year begins, that's when things kind of start to ramp up. But I agree with you. Like, I'm seeing people put out mock drafts now, and I'm like, great for you. But, like, I just don't care. Like, I, along with many others, are still in the scouting department or scouting area for the draft. Like, people were talking about, oh, it's my 13th mock draft. And I'm like, holy hell, I haven't even gone through safeties yet. Like, my God. But I digress. They're definitely not moving Shanahan to Indianapolis. No. Kyle said, scouting combine? Not a chance I'll be there. Not a freaking chance. Moving along here, though, because, again, with the combine coming up, I do want to give you one player from each position that you can look out for at the NFL Scouting Combine this year. I'll give you a handful of running backs, not just one because this class is so deep, but I'm going to try to give you one player from each position to look out for at the NFL Scouting Combine in the next week in Indianapolis. Quarterbacks. San Francisco doesn't need a starter, but a backup quarterback I think is really important for them to bring in. I have mentioned people like Joe Flacco and Jared Stidham and Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and Joshua Dobbs, albeit the latter probably doesn't want to return next year. Although I think it's really important San Francisco has to find a backup quarterback this offseason for Brock Purdy. And there is a quarterback in this year's NFL draft class that I think would really, like, when Kyle talks about, I want my quarterbacks to play similar to my starter. There is a quarterback from Syracuse named Kyle McCord that really is Brock Purdy light. Now, he does turn the ball over a little too much for my liking, but he plays fast. The mechanics are consistent. He's uber competent, really good in play action for Syracuse this past year. He has mobility. He can run with the football. He's almost like a less refined Brock Purdy. And I think that's kind of what you want out of your backups. Can you be a less refined version of my starter? And Purdy has shown to be a high-end starter at times. Obviously, you want some more consistency than what last year had shown, but McCord last year with Syracuse, 4,568 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 31 big-time throws, and 22 turnover-worthy plays, which is the most of any quarterback in this draft class. But he's aggressive, he's loose, he has the deep ball. I think if you're going to look for a quarterback that could back up Brock Purdy as a draftable quarterback this year, I think Kyle McCord makes some sense, albeit he may go too high for San Francisco's liking. Moving along to running backs, I have three of them. I won't touch on all of them too deeply here. That said, I think there's a lot to like from this year's class, and I think that's for Niner fans that see Chris McCaffrey's aging and been given the football a lot last couple of years. Jordan Mason may or may not leave this offseason. Guerrero had his own injury concerns this past year. Elijah Mitchell is done in San Francisco, and then you have Patrick Taylor Jr. I think may come back. We'll see. I think he's pretty cheap to bring back, and probably a good chance he comes back next year. But really deep running back class this year. When you talk about 4 through the 6 rounds, you can still find some viable contributors for you late in the draft. And the first one, my favorite of this class of a late round draft pick, would be, I think it's Kalel Mullings from Michigan. He's 6'2", 230 pounds. He had 948 yards last year for the Big Blue. 657 were after contact, 37 forced missed tackles. He's a linebacker convert to running back, so he has that physicality that you like. He doesn't fumble. He's a north and south runner. Sometimes a little too impatient, but he wants to run people over. He wants to be physical. And when you talk about, trying to get CMC on the outside and find that in between the tackle running back, I think Mullings is just like yep, sign me up. That's the guy I want on my offense in a rotation with Guerrero, CMC. And if Mason doesn't come back, it makes the need for a player like Mullings even higher. The next guy on my list at the scouting combine is Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State. Now, a lot of concerns with injuries with him. In 2023, he was likely trending towards a first-round pick, and we all said, oh, he'll be special. But 2024 was an utter disaster. I don't know which player he'll be, which is why I think the combine, his testing will definitely help him and his draft stock. In 2023, he had that violence you like from your running backs, guys that want to get their hands dirty, that want to run through safeties and cornerbacks and take on linebackers. He didn't have that this past year, which is really confusing. Like, how do you lose your physicality? I'm not sure if he was injured, but even this past year, he forced 41 missed tackles. So can still get through defenders. He had 20 explosive plays, 12 rushing touchdowns, 862 rushing yards, 621 were after contact. So there's a lot to like, but also a lot of concerns with him. Also, Oklahoma State's their offensive line was not that good whatsoever. I know, I'm sure many of you will say Cam Scatabo out there. He'd be great to get in here. I think he'll go round 2. Maybe round 3. I'm focusing on those round 4, 5, and 6 guys at the moment. I think the last guy I have on here is very much a kind of a bowling ball bruiser. That is Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. He's 5'9", 210 pounds, over 1,200 yards last year, 860 after contact. Listen to this. Kyle Monangai, 72 forced missed tackles last year, 13 rushing touchdowns. Just a dog, a human pinball. I want to see how he tests, but he's excellent in pass pro. Doesn't have the speed you want for a player or from your running backs. But again, he's 5'9", 210. Just get in the tackles and go crazy, right? I love Kyle Monangai. Like, I am a Monangai and Mullings guy. If you want to give me an M&M connection, let's do it. Monangai has 600 plus carries, 0 fumbles out of Rutgers. Sign me up for that in a heartbeat with Christian McCaffrey and Garendo. Even if you bring back Jordan Mason, get Kyle Monangai. Let him be your 4th back on your roster. Stash him for a year and let him go berserk in 2026. Like, sign me up for that any day of the week. Moving along to receivers here. I have 3 again because receivers, this class is, the high-end guys aren't insane, but a lot of depth this year. I already talked about one of these guys in the previous live stream. That was Savion Williams from TCU. He's this year's Deebo Samuel, right? He squats 600 pounds. He benches 335. Has a great long speed. He's a massive man. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. Just incredible. He's a really good blocker. I mean, he can be your kick returner. He can be your inside, your outside, your slot, your X, your wide back, your wildcat quarterback. Like, he's just a freak athlete that maybe Kyle could say, I can do so much with that maybe it leads to a higher than likely draft selection for Savion Williams. But I think a guy like even Pat Bryant from Illinois makes some sense. 6'2", 208 pounds, carries his weight well. Incredible play strength. Not the greatest speed and route runner, but he's one of those like Juwan Jennings style of guys. Just a dog. A guy you want to have on your offense to take care of defenders, that can block really well. He's got the yak ability. He'll break through tackles, very similar to Juwan Jennings. Although I think maybe re-signing Juwan is in the cards during this season. Say San Francisco is looking at their book long term and says, hey, let's find our next Juwan Jennings. I think Pat Bryant could be that for you, albeit he isn't 6'3", 215. He is 6'2", 208. He's one of those unafraid to go over the middle, get his hands dirty kind of receivers. So really hard to dislike Pat Bryant from Illinois. And the last one on my list for receivers is Jalen Knoll. Almost the exact opposite of Pat Bryant, whereas Pat Bryant 6'2", 210. Knoll is 5'9", 195, maybe a little thinner than that, but incredible change of direction, high-end speed, can be a punt returner for you. He's got the yak ability. He'll break a tackle after the catch. You want to talk about getting a burner in this offense? Jalen Knoll screams that. Again, smaller, 5'10", but as a slot, you can use him on your jet sweeps and whatnot. I really like what Knoll has to offer. Albeit if you listen to what Tim Kawakami is saying, there is this kind of change of direction for the franchise. I can see Knoll not being one of them that you like. But he offers a lot that you might say, wow, I want that on my team in 2025. We have some comments here. Monangai is fun to watch by Benali P. Kawachito says Williams is fool's gold. Yeah, I can see that. But he also says, which means Kyle can't help himself. Also wouldn't be shocked there. Really wouldn't be shocked if Kyle's like, need that guy on my team. But be really, really, really fun if he was, albeit, again, maybe some green behind the ears conversations to have. Rather unrefined player, more athlete than receiver, if you will, from Savion Williams. Moving on to tight ends, there's a lot of guys to put on here. But again, focusing on those kind of later round guys, you're going to hear Tyler Warren's name. Of course you are, right? But I think that if there was one guy I point to that I think could surprise, that may scream San Francisco 49er, there's a risk with taking him. But Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, he's 6'5", 260 pounds, a very massive human being. The only issue is he tore his ACL and his MCL in 2023. Probably not going to be highly drafted. Hence why the combine's a big deal for him to go out there and prove he can be healthy and stay healthy. But a really good run blocker. He's a guy that plays up to his size. He can line up in line and in your slot. He's not the biggest athlete, but he'll box out. Good red zone receiver for you. Not a great separator, but after the catch, really good as well. I think he's one of those players that when they pick him, it may be a stash, but I think that Mitchell Evans could give San Francisco something, whether it's this year or next year, that they haven't really had in a long time, if ever, under Kyle Shanahan, that being a tight end 2 behind George Kittle. If you want to get to like a higher picks player, maybe Benjamin Yurceric from Georgia. He's like Kyle Juszczyk 2.0. The stats aren't there, but he can do it all. It's crazy. Like you talk about Swiss Army knife players, Benjamin Yurceric from Georgia is like the guy where you're like, oh my God, what can't he do out there? And then like your top end receivers are like Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green, who had 100 catches this past year, over 1,300 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns for tight end. He's a machine. If you want that like round 2 tight end, Harold Fannin is your guy. He's a stud. He's a stud. Phenomenal run blocker. He's like Jonnu Smith, but like prime Jonnu Smith this past year with the Dolphins, where you're like, whoa, like you want to give, and I hate to use his name, but you want to give Kyle this, George Kittle, Fannin Jr., 2 tight end set stuff. You're talking about Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. Like that's how special they can be as receivers, as tight ends. Moving on to offensive tackles, though, because I guarantee you, whether it's my mock drafts, whether it's someone else's mock drafts, like last year, everybody's screaming, get a right tackle, get a right tackle, get a right tackle. Now that conversation has somewhat shifted to find an eventual replacement successor for Trent Williams. And I think you can obviously point to Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks, but let's say on the off chance San Francisco trades back in the first round, I think Josh Simmons from Ohio State makes a lot of sense. Coming off a torn ACL, I believe, so there are certainly some health concerns with him, but very balanced player, extremely wide and low stance. He's not going to give up, to smaller defenders. He has leverage consistently. He had 1 pressure allowed last year, an 82 pass blocking grade, a 68.7 run blocking grade, really strong hands. He seems like one of those players you say he'll be a starter for 10 plus years. Like, wow. So I can see Josh Simmons being one of those guys. If you want to go to the interior, which is where I think San Francisco should really be trying to improve, whether it's center or left guard, or even having a player you draft that can play tackle, right tackle primarily, and guard would go a long way for you. I think Marcus Mbao from Purdue, he's 6'5", 300 pounds, rather light for a tackle, but that's how Shanahan likes his offensive linemen. 71.7 pass blocking grade at Purdue this past year, 76.4 run blocking grade this past year. Played right guard in 2022, played right tackle in 2023, and obviously last year at Purdue. He's an athlete. He's an athletic offensive lineman. If you want to get him out there in space to pull and be a guard, he can do it for sure. I think he is going to get moved inside to avoid being beaten by these bull rushing edge rushers. Get him some help. I would love to have him next to Trent Williams next year. That'd be pretty awesome. But on the off chance San Francisco says, hey, let's just improve right tackle, we like Ben Bartch, hence the re-signing, Mbao could be that second or third round guy I point to and say, yep, that's your Dominic Pooney of this year's draft. I could really see that for them. And he just fits the archetype Kyle likes out of his offensive lineman. I do want to get to defense really quick here because depending on what San Francisco does in the first round, and I am of the mindset of you got two players. The odds you get one of the top tackles are pretty slim. You're probably not going to get Abdul Carter. He's really good. Probably going one or two, maybe a three at the latest. I think that there are two like bona fide, if they're there, you take him type players for San Francisco on defense at pick 11. One of those is Mike Green. Mike Green is incredible. He had 17 sacks last year at Marshall. Just a specimen. He is probably in this year's draft class my number 2 edge rusher that fits San Francisco's defense because Pierce out of Tennessee really doesn't fit what they want to do schematically. I think Mike Green is just out of this world. He's probably on most boards the number 3 guy out of the edge rushing class. But he's only a redshirt sophomore. Hit a 91.6 pass rushing grade last year, 67 pressures, 17 sacks, a 21% pass rush win rate. He's ultra bendy, fluid pass rusher, smooth hips, fearless against the run. Like, he really does it all. Like, the only question about Mike Green is, like, you played at Marshall. Who'd you actually go against? But I think he's too good to not take. And in most of my mock drafts, if he's there, I'm taking him over even a player like Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, although Nolan is also incredible. He's the other guy I'd take if he's there at 11. And if they're both there, you're kind of like, this is the best of both worlds for us on draft day. But in the second round, this player may not be there because his stock is trending upwards, but I'm a massive fan of Darius Alexander from Toledo, 6'3", 305 pounds, a 6th-year senior, 25 years old as a rookie. Look at last year, San Francisco was drafting like ready-to-go players. Pearsall, Mustafa, Garendo, Pooney, they wanted day one starters. Darius Alexander's a day one starter for you if you pick him. Phenomenal run defender, a 90.3 run defense grade per PFF. 4 sacks last year, 37 total pressures, 6 batted passes in the last 2 years, 14 tackles for losses this past year for Darius Alexander. He's violent hands, explosive first step. You want to talk about, the perfect 1 or 2 rounds for San Francisco on defense, at least. It's Mike Green and it's Darius Alexander in round number 2. I would also, if I'm San Francisco and I'm sitting there and I'm like, look, Alexander's still there. The clock's ticking on the first round. I would not be afraid to make a trade up for Darius Alexander. That's how much I believe in him as a interior defensive lineman. I do want to give you a tweener because I think San Francisco, and maybe it's just me, I think they want to find their next Charles Omenihu. I think the idea of signing Yetur Gross-Matos was this, the inside-outside versatility, get you one of those guys. But I think Jordan Burch from Oregon just screams Robert Saleh guy. 6'5", almost 300 pounds, 295. 81.3 pass rushing grade, 10 sacks last year, 34 pressures, a 16.3 pass rush win rate percentage. Isn't super lengthy, but really stout, compact player, strong lower half. There's just certain guys you point to and say, you don't want to face him. Like, he is a defensive mother effer. Like, oh my God. Like, I don't want, like, if I'm a guard, if I'm a center, I don't want to be lined up across Jordan Burch. He's terrifying. He's scary. And I think of a defensive scheme with Saleh and Chris Kosaric, they can do wonders with Jordan Burch on their defense. I think he's that tweener you like, and if Darius Alexander's gone come round 2 or 3, I am on the Jordan Burch train to San Francisco. Edge rusher, albeit maybe can play inside too, from Oregon. Linebackers, though, this is where things get tricky because things get really, really tricky at linebacker. I'm of the mindset that San Francisco is not going to draft a linebacker this year. I think they like Bethune, they like Winters, whether it is Greenlaw or they go and sign somebody else. Jamie Sherwood makes some sense. Um, I have a hard time buying into the fact they're going to draft a top end guy. But for the sake of the viewer out there that will continually comment, what about Jalen Walker from Georgia? The reason why I will watch him intently during the combine and workouts is because I want to know, is he an edge rusher or is he a linebacker? Because Jalen Walker has so much to offer at both positions. However, he's not great in coverage as a linebacker. Great pass rusher at 93.4 pass rushing grade last year, 33 pressures, 4 sacks. They used him as an off-ball linebacker at Georgia at times, but doesn't really have a pass rushing plan. Also isn't great in coverage, doesn't have that quickness. I want to see what his testing results are because it may change my mind. I'm not of the mindset of picking him, although I think that maybe there is a way to change my mind if he tests really well at the scouting combine this week. I want to move to cornerbacks quickly here because I got 3 of them, and then we'll end here. My safeties, Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. This safety class doesn't really wow me that much. I'm not of the mindset, kind of like linebacker, where it's like you don't really need to draft one. But being an OU fan, I want to see my guy out there, Billy Bowman Jr., and see how he tests. But cornerback is a much bigger need, although you have 2 really good ones in Lenore and Bernardo Green. The first one on my list at cornerback is Noel Williams from Cal, 6'1", almost 200 pounds, 195. He's a 5-year starter, had a 74.8 zone coverage grade this past year, 7 interceptions. He's a ball hawk. He goes nuts out there. Excellent play strength. His size, again, being 6'195", indicates a press man coverage corner. I would love that for him because he wants to be physical. He wants to go out there and attack receivers, use his hands. He doesn't have the long speed that you like, but San Francisco wants to have feisty and nasty corners. Noel Williams fits that kind of archetype of guys they want. He can play outside for you. He's someone that is comfortable playing through contact over the middle. He also doesn't mind taking on bigger receivers. That is okay. That is San Francisco 49ers right there, if I've ever seen it or heard it. The next one is Shavon Revel from East Carolina, 6'3", 185. He's interesting because he's coming off a torn ACL, but he's in that freak athlete category that I think many fans of any team will say, I want that player in my secondary. He's incredible recovery speed. That if he gets beat, he will almost outrun receivers because he's so quick. He's like, oh crap, I'm too fast for these guys out here on a consistent basis. He has really good strength for his size, 6'3", 185. Maybe you wish he was a little bigger. I've heard pro comps to Tariq Woolen with Seattle. I think there certainly are concerns in regards to being a tackler for a player his size. But other than that, really good run defender. He's everything you want out of a coverage corner. Like when you talk about going against Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, your bigger receivers out there, even Puka Nacua for that matter. Ravel is one you point to and say he can not lock those guys up, but physically match up with them on a consistent basis. I do wonder if at times he relies too heavily on his physical gifts compared to his technique, but you draft him, you can work with things and see if he can improve, but he still has the freak athletic nature to be a really good corner at the NFL. And the last one, and I hope I get this name right. Forgive me if I don't. it's, I think it's, is it Azere Thomas? I hope that's right. Maybe I'm wrong. If I am, I completely apologize. From Florida State, I think he's phenomenal. I think round 2, round 3, get him, snag him. I'm not for drafting a cornerback in the first round, even in round 2. Not great either. But in round 3, why not get Renardo Green's former teammate and line them both outside? He's 6'2", almost 200 pounds. He has 32.5-inch arms. 20 years old on draft night. Super young. 71.8 zone coverage grade. Can also play man coverage extremely well. 71.7 man coverage grade this past year. Also, relatively good run defender. A 66 run defense grade per PFF. He has the perfect size to be a starting cornerback. Also played 300 plus man coverage snaps the last 2 years. He's physical at the catch point. He wants to get underneath receiver skin on a consistent basis. He has been the epitome of consistency at Florida State. I would love if San Francisco drafted Thomas from Florida State as a cornerback to maybe replace Travarius Ward this year, because you've heard names like DJ Reed and Carlton Davis from the Lions. I think San Francisco needs to get younger. They got 10 picks. You got 10 guys to draft, and this draft class is really deep at really cornerback, defensive tackle, running back. Offensive line isn't as deep as you like, but edge, defensive tackle, there's so many good, consistent, and starting caliber players on the defensive side of the football in this year's draft class, where I am stoked as to what San Francisco can do to help this team. Maybe, as Kawachipto points out, maybe Makuba from Texas makes some sense as a safety. It's true as well. Hyper explosive player. I really do like him. But the one last thing to end on is a question by Fish and Chips, who says, I think the question is right now, will we move that first round draft pick for capital? Now, I think a good question to ask is, are they going to trade up or are they going to trade back? I have a hard time believing San Francisco may trade up, albeit maybe if Will Campbell is there in front of the Bears, maybe a deal gets done with the Saints. I can see that happening. I think it's more likely if you have players like Will Johnson from Michigan, if you have a player like Jahdae Barron from Texas, if maybe Tadrow McMillan drops for whatever reason out of the top 10, I can see teams saying, I got to get that guy on my team, and they get a trade done and trade back. The Falcons make some sense, albeit they probably want Mike Green, which I wouldn't want them to get because I want him on my team. But I think trading back is much more likely than trading up. I think there's the depth this year is crazy. I think you can see Walter Nolan go in the 20s. I think a team like the Broncos, who may want a running back, the Dallas Cowboys pick at 12, I believe. Teams may want to get ahead of them to get maybe Ashton Genty. A lot of maneuverability when it comes to moving back in the draft, not much moving forward. Although, if quarterbacks go early, being Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and things get crazy in the top 10, you never know. But my prediction would be a move back in the draft. That makes a lot more sense for San Francisco. But that's all I have for you today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, everybody in the YouTube comments. Great one. Dre Area Sports, Michael Cananzaro, Fish and Chips, Kawachipto, Papa J, Benali P, Bobo, every single one of you. Strawberry Reacts. Don't forget to follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X, or Twitter, 49ers Access is the Instagram. Use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49ERSACCESS at SeatGeek.com and save yourself $20 off your first purchase and get yourself a can of goat fuel down below in the description and save yourself 10% off with that link. My name is Sterling Bennett. Welcome to the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave that review. And until next time, as always, stay faithful.